Sure. Okay. And then through your years, here's a question that I had from earlier. I didn't get to it, but you've been working on SENS for a few years now with the Methuselah Foundation, different labs around the world. You've, of course, been working with like Jens and Dr. Rose. You've corresponded with everyone generally in the field of anti-aging. What has been the biggest stumbling block that you've seen so far? I mean, from what you imagined back in say 2000 or 2001 until now, 2009. Here we are 9 years later. Certainly, we don't have robust rejuvenation, and you didn't expect it by now. But perhaps has there been anything that's been a big stumbling block that's been a little more difficult not to crack than what you had thought out in the beginning?
That's a very good question. On the scientific side, I would say no. I would say pretty much everything has moved forward at the sort of speed I was hoping it was going to, subject only, of course, to the fact that much of it has been very underfunded. There's only one real exception to that, which is the development of ways to break glycation-induced crosslinks in the extracellular environment. You probably remember this drug ALT-711, which didn't really pan out.
Right.
And we now also know that we think anyway, that the type of crosslink that ALT-711 was supposed to break isn't actually very significant in humans anyway, so it's getting more important to break something else that's much harder to break, called glucosamine, and we don't know how to do that yet. So in a sense, that part of SENS has not advanced, whereas pretty much everything else has. However, if I answer your question more generally, I think there's one big thing that has disappointed me, which is the last couple of years of attempting to raise serious money for this. I think that most people felt that once we got one or two big hitters coming in, which of course we did back in 2006 with Peter Thiel, that it would start to be, a bit of an avalanche, especially since I was obviously working very, very hard getting the word out, and that really hasn't happened yet. And actually, the attempt to understand that and to do something about it was really what started the process of splitting the Methuselah Foundation in two. We felt that now we're in a situation where we can more easily and more thoroughly appeal to people who have been worried that we were not really the right sort of organisation for them, even if they did sort of believe in me.
Okay, yeah, and the getting the word out, yeah, I thought as well as you that the big donation, many of the things that Methuselah was doing would naturally just grow with time, that it would sell itself. Who's out there? I mean, what is the trend in society here that still seems to produce this resistance to the idea of radical life extension? I know last summer at UABBA, you had mentioned, and some of your speakers on the Friday night event had mentioned that people didn't believe it was possible, or that it was outside of the realm of their, that they couldn't pay for it, or there were several different reasons. But hasn't research and media coverage of therapies, disease treatments, and general life extension, haven't we broken a bigger barrier?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I think really even now it's not possible to say that results in the laboratory and in the clinic have made much of a difference to the overall impression of the feasibility of doing anything about aging. I think it's still something where you have to do some work to understand what these results mean in order to believe that they do actually have an impact on the plausibility of this approach to combating aging. I think, however, we can say one good thing, which is that over the past couple of years, media attention on me and my work and the foundation and this sort of thing has continued, and if anything even intensified. And not just media exposure, I've been doing even more conferences than ever before. I think I gave 55 invited talks last year. It was pretty painful for my wife, whom I hardly saw. It was, I mean, so interest is not going away at all. It's building and building. Of course, we had the book out only 18 months ago, and that's been important as well, getting the word out. I wouldn't have been on Colbert otherwise. I wouldn't have been on one of the other shows.
That's right.
So I think the way I at it anyway, is that even though we haven't really seen the final bottom line outcome of all of this, the actual delivery of very large funds, nevertheless we have seen a lot of work that will make that easier, that will bring us closer to cracking those nuts.
Okay.
It's just a matter of you don't see it until you actually do crack the nuts.
Yeah, someone did mention, someone compared venture capital funding versus charity, and said in the chat here that one works better than the other. And is there...
Right, so that's changing too.
Yeah, that's
changing as well.
With the SENS Foundation, you're planning on licensing some of this IP that perhaps is developed? Is that what I've heard?
Okay, so there are a couple of things that we're doing in this respect. The classic situation, of course, has been we felt that this is just too long term for us to be able to realistically approach people who are interested in making money.
Okay.
And that has already somewhat changed because, of course, the science has moved forward anyway, and plus also as people get really focusing on this, they begin to realise that it makes sense to accept the possibility of longer time frames than they might accept in another context. However, also, of course, one can make money out of things without actually taking them all the way to the clinic. And this is a large part of the reason why we've been so encouraged to start up and grow as rapidly as we can our own in-house laboratory. If you go back to the sort of things I wrote a few years ago, you'll find that I was saying that it made sense to start an Institute of Biomedical Gerontology only after a lot of success had occurred in the lab, in academia.
Right.
And it was mainly focused on combining things into multiple things that already worked individually into the same mice. And that's really changed. And again, I gave a big shout out to Kelsey Moutier. I should give an even bigger one to John Schlandorn, who really has moved heaven and earth to put together the Institute of Biomedical Gerontology down in the Phoenix area, first in Scottsdale and now in Tempe.
Right.
And they are producing stuff where the foundation actually owns the IP, or at least owns a lot of it.
Sure.
Well, if you're doing stuff in university laboratories, then you can try and get technology transfer agreements that involve a share of IP, but it's like pulling teeth. You basically don't get hardly anything.
I see. So we're going to have to rely on fundraising still as a majority portion of SENS funding.
Well, maybe, but as I say, the IBG is already producing very important results that do constitute intellectual property, and we may not be as far off from making money out of that as all that. We'll have to see, but it's definitely part of our plan.
Okay, well...
Okay, guys, I do have to run now, I'm afraid.
You have to go? That's great. Thank you so much, Aubrey, for spending some time with us this evening. Have a good night.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Yes, there. Finally, we got the interview on the air with Aubrey De Grey, and I want to personally thank him for being such a gentleman and hanging on through the hour for this interview. And I want to apologize to the audience here tonight. We had such a big audience for the interview here, and we had a real difficult time getting going. And you know what? I kind of suspect that my computer was going through a software upgrade process. You know how Microsoft does it in the background without even telling you sometimes, and it takes like 20 minutes to download a patch or something to that effect, an operating system upgrade. I think that might have been the problem. Anyway, I wanted to pull my hair out, but then I don't have any hair to pull out, so I was even more up a creek with the technical trouble in the beginning. Usually the show, it's a little bit more well produced, as you heard in the beginning. I was trying to start out with our theme song and some news and some graphics, but throw that all out the window. That's all done for tonight for whatever reason. We had some gremlins in the computer here tonight. I want to thank everyone for asking questions and sticking with the show here tonight. I did get the Aubrey interview here, the audio recorded, so it looks like it's going to go just fine. So once again, sorry for the technical trouble that we did have earlier on, and it's a little bit of a mystery to me. I've been trying to figure it out, and a couple of weeks ago I said I was going to redo our studio here, redo the background and get it all looking snazzy, but obviously that isn't done yet, although I have, believe it or not, the studio was a total mess before. I mean,